Hey everyone, this is a follow-up and companion video to the class that we had last Thursday on one of my favorite LSAT argument structures and argument structures for life generally, and correlation causation. Not all of the questions directly ask you to notice that there's a correlation causation flaw, but noticing that's what's going on helps you answer the question. So let's jump into this one. So this is one of my all-time favorite argument structures because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. It says, gyms and fitness centers are sometimes good places to buy used exercise machines. Okay, this looks like a conclusion to me. I'm sure they're going to tell us why they're good places to buy used exercise machines. When gyms and fitness centers upgrade their machines, they often sell the old machines at reasonable prices. Okay, so they sell things at reasonable prices. Although these exercise machines have generally seen considerable use, they are built better than those machines intended for home use and have probably been well maintained. Okay, so they're giving us three reasons here. They have reasonable prices, they're better built, two, and they have probably been well maintained, three. But what they're trying to prove to us is that these gyms and fitness centers are good places to buy used exercise equipment. My objection to this is that those are not the same things. Nowhere has this proved to us that having reasonable prices and good equipment actually makes it a good place to buy said equipment. I have my objections on the further slides, but off the top of my head, what if there's a crazy guy who works there and he shoots everybody? Or what if all of the gyms and fitness centers are next to active volcanoes that are going to blow up and kill you? In that case, they might not be good places. The key to notice here is that the evidence is related to the conclusion, but it doesn't necessarily prove the conclusion. In the real world, we would think, okay, good prices and good equipment is probably a good place to buy things. But on the LSAT, those aren't the same thing. Like a good place to buy something and a place where you can get affordable good things are not exactly the same thing. Similar, but not exactly. So my problem with this is that we haven't proven the conclusion, satisfyingly at least. So they're telling us that gyms are sometimes good places to buy equipment, and that used equipment they sell is well priced, well made, and well maintained. And then, like I said, we have a conclusion, but the evidence doesn't exactly match it. It doesn't prove that that makes it good. Yeah, what if the equipment is too heavy to transport and it breaks your house's floor? What if everyone lives in apartments that don't allow those machines? What if it's against the law to buy machines? Or what if the gym just makes you walk on hot coals before you can buy them, right? Would you go buy equipment from a place that made you walk on hot coals? Probably not. So the question that goes along with this is, which one of the following principles, if valid, most helps justify the reasoning in the argument above? So something to notice about this question is that it's asking you to justify the argument, and that means that the argument must be flawed. So if you were ever curious and you see this, know that there's probably a hole in it. Like if you read it and you think, oh, wow, that makes complete sense, sure. And then you read the question and the question says to strengthen it or to give a justifying principle, it can help to take a step back and say, okay, well, what is wrong with this in the first place? And I know what I think is wrong with this, and that is that good prices, well maintained, and built better are not the same thing as good places to buy. So to pick a principle off the top of my head that would make this work, to make this argument work, you would have to say that if there's a place that has equipment that is reasonably priced and well maintained and built better, then that confirms that it is in fact a good place to buy used exercise machines. So that's what I'm expecting to see. So we have A. Any good source of used exercise machines will offer at least some well-maintained machines at reasonable prices. Does this help prove the conclusion? So if you have a good source of used exercise machines then it will offer those machines at reasonable prices. This is a little backwards. What we want is something that says, hey, the evidence that we have proves our conclusion. This kind of says, well, if you assume that the conclusion, if you assume the subject of the conclusion, which is a good source of used exercise machines, then it will offer them at a reasonable price. The issue is that doesn't confirm to us that if you have reasonable prices, therefore, that it is a good place. An example of this is we need something that says, if the equipment is good, then it's a good place to buy. And what we're given is if it's a good place to buy, it will have good equipment. What's an analogy we could use for this? I'll use the food example. I think that's in the coming slides. Let's say someone says, this food is good because this food is spicy. We need to prove that spicy food is good. And what this is saying is that good food is spicy. But that's not enough, because what if it also has to be edible? Or what if it also has to be inexpensive or something like that? What we need is something that says, if food is spicy, then it's good. All right. So to save some time, because it's going to be a long lesson, I skipped ahead. And the other potential option here is C. And C works because C says, any place where one can buy well-maintained used exercise machines at reasonable prices is a good place to buy used exercise machines. So this works because it says, hey, the evidence that we have, which is that it's well-maintained and there's reasonable prices, if you have that, then you are for sure a good place to buy used exercise machines. If we add this to the question or to the text here, everything works out. I highlighted A, but trust me, the answer is C. I just did a bad job copying and pasting. So this argument happens everywhere. And the structure of this argument is A is B because A is C. Right? An example of this could be car A is good B because the car A is fast. And fast is our third element here. But if you notice here, fast is not the same thing as good. Right? In order to make this work, you would have to add something that said, if it is fast, then it is good. And then everything kind of works out here. The car is good because the car is fast, and fast is good, so it all kind of works out. Another example might be the food example. Food A is bad B because food A is spicy C. You add this third element in order to justify that the food is good, or bad in this case. But spicy and bad or spicy good are not the same thing. Another example might be politician is bad, A is B, because that politician, A, said, did, implied, hinted at something that I don't like, which is C. But you have to do extra work to prove that saying, doing, implying the thing that you don't like is the same thing as bad. That takes a little bit of extra work. And on the LSAT, it's never the same thing. They're always a little bit different. So let's go into correlation causation. This argument does not ask us, strictly speaking, about correlation causation, but knowing that's what's going on helps us solve the question. So the passage says, Roberta, the recent increase in independently produced films indicates that filmmakers are as tired of the junk turned out by the big studios as audiences are. Clearly, these new films result from a yearning for inventive filmmaking. All right, so Roberta is saying that we have independently produced films, and the reason is because there is a yearning for inventive filmmaking. Excellent. And then we have Vernon. Vernon says, if you had seen any of these independent films, you would know that they are just as poor as studio productions. Okay, so he's saying the independent films suck just like studio films. The trend is merely a search for inexpensive labor. Now that well-trained, experienced, and unionized film crews are getting paid what they deserve, more filmmakers are using non-unionized crews. Far from being better than studio films, independent films add a layer of incompetent crew to the usual list of incompetencies. So Vernon is saying, no, the real reason that we have these independently produced films is because they're cheaper to produce. That's it. They're cheap to produce, and that's why we have them. So both of them are looking at a conclusion. That is, we have this rise in independently produced films, and they both provide different evidence for it. Roberta is saying, hey, look, the evidence that I have is that people are tired of junk. And so that's why they're making these films. They want inventive filmmaking, as she says. And Vernon says, no, the studio's just trying to save money. It's cheaper to use these non-unionized, inexpensive crews. That's why we have the independent films. That's it. It's just a matter of saving money. So they're both providing their own evidence for this. It's kind of like a correlation-causation issue. People are yearning for inventive filmmaking, and that explains why we have the films. And Vernon says, no, they want inexpensive labor. That's why we have these independent films. So both of them are arguing that there's these related concepts, and therefore one of the concepts must be causing the other one. And it could be something completely unrelated to that. Oh, skipped ahead a little bit. Yeah, and this thing happens in the real world all the time. Someone will say thing A is caused by thing B, and then someone else says, no, thing A is actually caused by thing C. And Roberta and Vernon are arguing about what is causing this rise in independent movies. Is it, according to Roberta, that there's dissatisfaction with major studios, or is it exploitation of cheap labor, which is what Vernon is saying? So this isn't direct correlation causation, and the question that we can go to doesn't ask us about that. But now that we've noticed that issue, we're really well positioned to answer the question. The question says, Roberta and Vernon's comments indicate that they disagree about, and my prediction for this, because I always want to make a prediction, is that they disagree about why the films, these independently produced films, are on the rise. Alrighty. You can take a look at this slide if you want to. I want to keep moving on, though, just in case. So the first option is A, the quality of studio filmmaking. Okay, do they disagree about the quality of studio filmmaking? When there's specifics like this on the LSAT, what helps for me is to just take them one by one. And if I'm not sure, I ask myself, okay, do either of them have an opinion on this? So for Roberta, what does she think about studio filmmaking? So I think she thinks they're negative because she says filmmakers are as tired of the junk turned out by the big studios as audiences are. So she clearly thinks that the studio films are making junk. Okay, so she has a negative opinion. We have hers, negative opinion. What about Vernon? He says if you had seen any of these independent films, you would know that they are just as poor as studio productions. And then at the end, he goes on to say, far from being better than studio films, independent films add an incompetent crew to the usual list of incompetencies. So he also does not like studio films. He says that they are poor and that they are full of incompetencies. So they don't disagree. They both dislike studio filmmaking. What about B? Do they disagree on the competence of crews working on independent films? So we know that Vernon thinks that the crews are incompetent, but Roberta doesn't say anything about them, right? We can't read too much into this. Like you might read that she's kind of thinking positively about the new films, and so therefore she must think that the crews must be good, but she never actually says that. She never says the films are good. She never says the crews are good. She just says that people are yearning for inventive filmmaking. So Vernon has an opinion, and Roberta has no opinion. So we can't say they disagree about this. C, whether unionized film crews deserve the pay they receive. So Roberta doesn't mention the crews at all, so she has no opinion. So already we know that they can't disagree because she has no opinion on it. Vernon, hmm, does he say anything about whether the unionized crews deserve the pay they receive? I suppose he does, because reading back through it, he says that now that the well trained, experienced, unionized film crews are getting paid what they deserve. Okay, so he does think they're being paid what they deserve. But Roberta, no opinion on it. D, whether audiences prefer independent films to studio films. Um, hmm. Now, you might think that Roberta thinks that they do, but she never says that they do. All she says is that the films result from a yearning for inventive filmmaking. So she doesn't know whether audiences prefer one or the other. She makes no claim. And I don't think Vernon does either. Looking back through it, no, Vernon also doesn't say anything about whether studios like them. His opinion is that they're equally poor, but we don't know what he thinks about audiences preferring. So we have no idea. E, the reason that independent film productions is on the rise. Yeah, this is what they're disagreeing about. Right? Roberta says, hey, they're on the rise because people yearn for inventive filmmaking. And Vernon says, no, they're on the rise because people are trying to save money. That's it. So that is the core of their disagreement. So I would go with E in this case. And E was the right answer on this one. So let's try another one, which is kind of like a correlation causation issue. It is drill set 12, question 2. In a typical university class in calculus, only 20% of the students regularly come to sessions devoted to practicing techniques for solving standard calculus problems. That's a lot of words, but we can summarize this as 20% of students go to study sessions for calculus. Cool. On average, those 20% get much better grades in the course than do their classmates who skip these sessions. Okay, so 20% go to lessons, and those 20% on average get better grades. Cool. So we have a correlation. There's a relationship between going to the study sessions and getting a better grade. But remember, we don't know that one of them is causing the other. But what does this conclude? It says, it is clear, therefore, that the practice sessions help students attending them learn how to solve calculus problems more effectively. So this person is saying, hey, look, we have this relationship. People who go to sessions are also people who get better grades. So therefore, the sessions are causing them to get better grades. Or actually, no, causing them to solve calculus problems. Okay, interesting. So it's like saying these two things are correlated. And so therefore, the sessions must be causing them to solve problems better, which is then causing them to get better grades. But we don't know that. It's just not something that we know. For example, it's true that the more ice cream that is sold, the more people are murdered. Or the more ice cream that is sold, the more people go to the beach. So does going to the beach cause people to buy ice cream? Or does buying ice cream cause people to go to the beach? And the answer to that is no. Summertime causes people to buy ice cream and go to the beach, right? There's this third thing called summer, and the social expectations of what you do during the summer that's actually causing those things. So in this case, we don't know if this is why they get better grades. We don't know if it's causing them to solve problems better. We just know that there's a relationship. I'll go over on the next slide that you can pause on. But what if the ones who go to the sessions are the ones that have lots of free time? And it's not the sessions that's helping them, it's the free time that they have. Like maybe they're not stressed about work, so they get better grades. Maybe the ones who go to the sessions are the ones who can financially afford to go to the sessions. They're the ones that can skip work and go to the sessions. And so, they just have more time. What if the people who go to the sessions suck up to the teacher, and sucking up to the teacher is getting them better grades, not the sessions? What if they go into their grade book? What if they used the study sessions and then they got together afterwards and they were like, hey, let's hack into the grade book and change our grades? In that case, they're getting better grades because they hacked into the grade book, not because they went to the study session, strictly speaking. So there's a correlation causation issue here. Yep, and here's a quick summary you can look over. I think I went over it already with my rambling, but you can take a look at that and see if it explains it for you. And the question asks us, which one of the following, if true, most weakens the argument? Okay, so I'm looking for something that says there is another reason why the students are doing good in their calculus classes that has nothing to do with their study sessions. Something like that. We're asked to weaken, and we know how to weaken it. It's correlation causation. We know what the issue is. The issue is that correlation is not causation. So to weaken this, we just have to point out that, hey, there's another reason. It's not the relationship you think it is. Just like if someone said, hey, the increase in sales in ice cream is causing more people to go surfing. To weaken that, I would say, hey, it's actually just summertime, dummy. That would be a weakener. Like, what if it's summertime instead? So what are our options? A, some students who attend the practice sessions are no faster at solving calculus problems than are the classmates who skip the sessions. Would that weaken this? So this would weaken the relationship between the practice sections and solving calculus problems, which is a good start, but it says some, and some here is doing a lot of work, because we're told in the section that on average, the 20% do much better. So we don't actually need all of them to do much better. We just need enough of them that the average changes. So the fact that some students do worse as a result of going to the sessions, or not as a result of going to the sessions, but they go to the sessions and then they're not as good as some people who skip the sessions, that doesn't change the fact that on average, the ones who go do better. So keep that in mind, right? If this had said every single one of them do better, then that would be a really excellent weakener. That's like, actually, no, they don't. Some of them don't do better. But in this case, they only said that on average, they do better. And so pointing out that some of them don't doesn't change that average. B, students who attend the practice sessions are more likely to go on to take further mathematics courses than are the classmates who skip the sessions. So for this one, you have to ask yourself, do we care at all about further mathematics courses? This part right here. Nothing about our conclusion says anything about doing other math courses. It's purely about calculus problems. So pointing out whether people do or don't take other math classes doesn't do anything to harm the argument that going to the practice sessions is helping them with their calculus. C, students who attend practice sessions are likely to want to receive high grades in their university calculus class. I would be tempted by this at first, because it kind of gives us another reason. It says, hey, the people who do the practice sessions want to do well. And so you might think at first glance, oh, so that means that their wanting to do well is what's causing them to do better, and it's not the sessions. But the problem with this is it doesn't tell us anything about the students who don't go to the sessions. So we're told that the students who go to the sessions want to get good grades. But what if the ones who don't go to the sessions also want to get good grades? It doesn't tell us that at all. It just says the ones who go to the sessions want good grades, but we know nothing about the ones who don't go to the sessions. So if they both wanted to get good grades, and one group got the good grades and one group didn't, that wouldn't really weaken the argument, if that makes sense. Right? Like if I said, going back to the ice cream and surfing example, if someone said, buying ice cream causes people to go surfing, and you added to that, people buy ice cream during the summer. Okay, that by itself does not call into question what's going on, because you haven't told me that people also go surfing during the summer. If you had both of those, then it would kind of explain what's going on. But just pointing out that the ones who go to the practice sessions want to receive good grades doesn't really help us get anywhere. D, students do their homework, or students who do their homework regularly are more likely to attend the practice sessions than are students who do not do their homework regularly. Awesome. So here we go. We're told that the people who go to the practice sessions do their homework. The people who don't go to the sessions don't do their homework. Man, that seems to me to be a reason why they might get better grades. That has nothing to do with the practice sessions. So what if it's not the practice sessions that's making them get a better grade? It's they do their homework. Like, hey, dummy, they're doing their homework. It's not the practice sessions, it's the homework. In the same way, we could say, hey, it's not buying ice cream that makes people go surfing. It's the summer that makes them go surfing. It's not the ice cream. So I like D. D is giving us another reason. It's giving us the homework to dot our I's and cross our T's. Students who skip the practice sessions are just as likely to show up for other reasons, for other sessions of the class, as our students who attend the practice sessions. Okay, I was out of it when I read that. Let's read that again. Students who skip the practice sessions are just as likely to show up for other sessions of the class as are students who attend the practice sessions. Well, do I care if they go to other practice sessions? Once again, our conclusion is just saying that, hey, the people who go to the practice sessions are getting good grades, which means that they must be, the sessions must be helping them solve calculus problems. I don't really care if they go to other sessions. That's just kind of irrelevant to the argument being made. So I dismiss E as well. So I think we're pretty good on D. And we can see that D was in fact the correct answer. All right, let's do one more for now. Drill set 12, question 7. To make crossing the street safer for pedestrians, this city paints crosswalks at some intersections. Okay, they paint crosswalks to make crossing the street safer. However, it appears that the painted crosswalks do not have their intended effect, since, as researchers have found, pedestrians crossing at intersections where crosswalks are painted are typically in greater danger from traffic than are pedestrians crossing at other intersections. Okay, this person is saying, hey, look, the city is painting these crosswalks to make crossing the street safe. But in the painted crosswalks, people get hurt more than at the crosswalks that are not painted. Okay. And so they're concluding that therefore the painting is not working. Okay. Let me give an example of why I think this doesn't work. Let's say that we go back to our previous example of calculus and practice sessions. Let's say that I have practice sessions, and the purpose of those practice sessions is to help students get good grades in calculus. And let's say we looked at the people who went to those practice sessions, and we saw that they were getting worse grades than the people who didn't go. And then I declared, all right, so the sessions must not be working because the people who go to them get lower grades. Well, what if people only go to the sessions if they're getting bad grades? Right? The people who are getting an A plus, they don't need to go to an extra practice session. They're already getting 100%. They don't need the practice session. So in that case, you're not really capturing what's going on. And in this case, my objection is, what if the crosswalks are only being painted at the most dangerous crosswalks? And so what if you have these dangerous crosswalks and the painting helps? It makes them a little bit less dangerous, but it's still more dangerous than other ones. It's kind of an objection that I have. That the correlation that we have between crosswalks being painted and those crosswalks being dangerous, that's just a correlation. They're kind of going together, they're going in the same direction, but we don't know that one is causing the other. Another flaw here is the sample. It's called what we call like a biased sample in science. For example, I know that there's a lot of exercise research that is done on colleges. And one thing that they will do when they want to test, physical activity is they will go grab the people who they have available, right? Like let's say you wanted to do a study on like push-up strength. What the school is probably going to do is they're going to go to the football team and they're like, hey, do push-ups for us for our study, right? And if you do that, you are going to think that the average human can do like tons of push-ups because they're football players. They do bench press and push-ups and they exercise a lot. They're also young and male and physically fit. So of course they're going to do lots of push-ups, right? But it's a biased sample. It doesn't give you what the average human can do. It just kind of gives you what young, male, physically fit athletes who train their chest strength regularly can do, right? And in this case, it could be a biased sample because it could be that they've only painted at the dangerous intersections, which is not reflective of crosswalks or intersections generally. All right, so here's a slide. I think I've gone over this with my rambles. Let me see. Oh yeah, these are good examples that I came up with before. Um, what if I told you that diets intended to combat diabetes don't work because lots of people on those diets have diabetes symptoms? Well, yeah, of course they do, because you're not going to go on an anti-diabetic diet unless you have diabetes. That doesn't mean that it's not working. It's intended to fight the diabetes, but you would only go on it if you had diabetes in the first place, or maybe if you were curious. I don't know. Maybe there's really curious people. Or what if I told you that hospitals are bad for you because lots of people die in hospitals? Yeah, that's true, but that's kind of like it's correlated, right? People go to the hospital and they die. There's a correlation there. Like they go, you go to the hospital, you die. The two lines go up at the same time. But they're only going to the hospital because they're sick, right? Like healthy people don't just decide to go to the hospital. So of course people die there. But it doesn't mean that the hospital's not working or that the hospital's dangerous. So the question asks us, the reasoning in the argument is most vulnerable to criticism on the grounds that the argument overlooks the possibility that. So now that we've kind of talked through this, we kind of know what they've overlooked. They've overlooked the fact that, I don't know how it's going to be worded. I've already forgotten how they word it. But something like, the crosswalks are only painted in places that are super dangerous. Or there's some other reason why people are dying in these locations that doesn't have to do with the crosswalks being painted. And that is what we have. It looks like I highlighted this and showed it was the correct answer too soon. But A, the city paints crosswalks only at intersections that are the most dangerous. Yeah, that would throw this whole thing into question. That's exactly what we're looking for, right? Like, what if painting it is helping reduce the number? It's just that there were so many of them because they were dangerous to begin with. Let's check a couple others just to see what they say. B, intersections where crosswalks are painted are typically crossed by pedestrians just as frequently as other intersections are. So this is just kind of saying that they have the same number of people crossing them. We're not bothered by this because once again, we're doing an average. What's the language that they use? Yeah, typically in greater danger. That kind of indicates to me they're talking about an average. They're kind of averaging things out a little bit. Also, the argument specifically, the conclusion is that the crosswalks aren't working. If I add, or the painting the crosswalks is not reducing the danger to the pedestrians. If I add to that, hey, the intersections are equally crossed, that doesn't really affect anything. Maybe they're equally crossed, maybe they're not. That wouldn't affect the conclusion. Yeah, let me know if you want further explanation of that. C. Pedestrians are also in danger at intersections that do not have painted crosswalks. Okay, so you're telling me that there's also danger at the other crosswalks that aren't painted. But once again, let's go back to what they said. Crossing at the intersections where crosswalks are painted are typically in greater danger from traffic than the ones crossing at other intersections. Okay, so once again, they're not denying that the other intersections could be dangerous. They're just saying that the painted ones are more dangerous. So pointing out that there's some danger doesn't change the conclusion. Going back to the hospital example, if someone said, hospitals are dangerous because people die there, so you shouldn't go to hospitals, right? If you add to that, hey, people who don't go to hospitals die sometimes too, that person could say, yeah, but they don't die as much. I never said they never died. I just said that they died more in the hospital, so don't go to hospitals. So that would not fully undermine our conclusion here. D. Even if crosswalks are painted at many intersections, many pedestrians will nevertheless cross at those intersections. Does this argument care whether or not people cross? No. Whether they're not painted or painted is kind of irrelevant to them. They're not saying people will or won't cross. They're saying they're at greater danger at the painted ones. So saying, like, well, if we don't paint them, people will still cross. And they would say, okay, good. I want them to be unpainted because then they're safer. Right? They wouldn't really mind people crossing or not crossing. E. In some of the intersections where crosswalks are painted, pedestrians are in relatively little danger from traffic. Once again, this seems like it's a weakness because it's like, hey, you're saying that they're generally dangerous, but some of them aren't dangerous. But once again, the conclusion is that they are typically in greater danger. They never said always in greater danger, right? For example, if I said, if you go to this restaurant, the food is usually good. And someone says to me, well, you're totally wrong because I went there last Thursday and I bought the shrimp and it wasn't very good. Okay, well, I never said it was good every time. I said it's usually very good. So pointing out one exception does not change usually. So it seems like it works, but just really, really focus on, what is the conclusion and what did they say? And in this case, they acknowledged that the crosswalks that aren't painted are not perfect. And they acknowledged that it's typically in greater danger, not always in greater danger. Yeah, here's a slide. I think it goes over what I've kind of explained already, just a visual aid that you can look over. And yeah, it's correlation, but it's also a biased sample. Oh, let's do this one too. I said I wouldn't do this one, but let's do it. Drill set number 10, question 9. Psychologist. Studies have shown that people who have adopted ambitious life goals and are striving to achieve them are much happier, on average, than are other people. So we have studies showing that if you choose ambitious goals and you work towards them, you will, on average, be happier than people who don't. Cool. Okay. Correlation. There's this correlation, a relationship. Um, you know, happier people typically adopt ambitious life goals and strive to achieve them. Cool. Thus, many people who are unhappy could become happier by adopting ambitious life goals and striving to attain them. So this person is making an argument based on correlation, and then they're assuming that there's actually causation there. They're saying, hey, look, there's this relationship between adopting life goals and striving to achieve them and being happier. So it must be the ambitious life goals and the striving that is making them happy. But we don't know that, right? What if it's the opposite? What if being happy motivates you to pursue your goals, right? In that case, if you're unhappy, the goals by themselves might not make you happy, right? Happiness might be triggering the goal setting, or maybe there's this unrelated thing, you know, um, maybe it's something else causing the happiness and also causing the life goals. We don't know. So I say psychologists bullshit. Look, we don't know that one of these is causing the other. It could be, it could also not be. So you haven't convinced me that this is going to help unhappy people. Um, it's like saying physically fit people are more like people who play sports are more likely to be physically fit. Therefore, if you're not physically fit, you need to play sports to get physically fit. Um, no, like what if the reason that they play sports is because they're healthy, right? What if it's not playing the sports makes them healthy? What if being healthy enables them to play the sport? Like if they were really sick and bedridden, they couldn't play a sport. That wouldn't help them, right? You wouldn't look at someone dying of cancer and say like, you just got to go play soccer, man. It makes them healthy. It'll make you healthy. It's like, well, I mean, in the real world, it's a little bit of both, right? Playing soccer probably makes you healthier, but to play soccer, you also kind of have to be healthy enough to play, right? So there's complicated relationships that can go on. And so just pointing out that there's a relationship like this doesn't prove that one is causing the other or that it's not more complicated than that. Yeah, so my summary is people chasing goals are happier. So if you're a sad sack, you should chase goals. That's my summary of this. Like if you go back to this, it's a lot of words. But as you do these questions, really try to summarize them in your own words without losing the important meaning in them. Because it's much easier to summarize. You can keep track of that much better. So in my head, my summary is, people who chase goals are happier. So you're a sad sack. If you're a sad sack, you should chase goals. Cool. If you're sad, chase goals because people chasing goals are happier. Cool. So their conclusion is these two things are related. And so this one particular one must be causing the other one, which is bullshit. We know that's bullshit. But what if being happy makes you chase goals? What if something else entirely causes both? So what does the question ask us here? The reasoning in the psychologist's argument is most vulnerable to criticism on the grounds that the argument fails to consider that. So my prediction is that it fails to consider that there could be a third reason causing both of those things. It also fails to consider the possibility that being happy is causing the life goals, not that the life goals are causing the happy. Let's see what this says. Maybe I'm right about this prediction. Maybe I'm not. Maybe it goes a different direction. All right. Once again, I highlighted the answer already because I wanted to go through this quickly in class. We only have 50 minutes. But let's go with A, just to see what goes on here. A condition that is required in order to produce a certain result may not in itself be sufficient to produce that result. So this is saying that they are confusing necessary for sufficient. So if this person had said, the psychologist had said, to be happy, you need to set goals. So if you set goals, you will be happy. If that is what they said, A would be the correct answer. Because in that example, we know that to be happy, you need to set goals. But we don't know that setting goals by itself is enough, right? Let me give an example. If someone said, to win a war, you need bullets. So therefore, if you have bullets, you will win the war. No. So you need bullets to win the war, but don't you also need guns to shoot them? The bullets by themselves would be useless, right? You need the bullets, but you also need guns. You also need soldiers. You need food. You need medicine. You need trucks to transport things. You need tanks. Maybe you need, intercontinental ballistic missiles. Maybe you need drones. Maybe you need spies. You might need lots of things to win the war. So just because you need bullets to win the war doesn't mean that bullets by themselves will make you win. It's just something that you need, not something that would by itself be sufficient to produce the result. So in this case, we don't know that being happy or setting goals or whatever are necessary. That's not really the mistake that they're making. If they had made that other argument, that would be the mistake, but that's not specifically what they said here. B, even if one phenomenon is associated with another phenomenon, the former phenomenon need not causally contribute to the latter. It's a lot of words. Spend some time looking at that. Pause the video, look it over. This is just saying, look, just because one thing is correlated with another thing, that does not mean that one of the things is causing the other thing. That's all that this means. It's a lot of words. It's very confusing. This is probably a harder difficulty question because it's using a lot of words when they could use fewer words. Like you could say much less and get the point across here. But a quick breakdown. This is just saying if one thing is related to another thing, that does not mean that one of the things is causing the other thing. In this example, it's like saying, look, just because chasing your goals is associated with being happy does not mean that chasing your goals is making you happy, is causally contributing to making you happy. Another example could be our beach and ice cream example, where it could be that like, hey, look, just because eating ice cream is associated with surfing, that doesn't mean that eating ice cream is causing surfing, right? That's not, they're just related, right? Yeah, so that's our objection. If you want me to go over, let me know. Any C, D, or E. If you ever want me to go over that and why they don't work, just let me know. I can make a quick video explaining that. We have another question. Video might be quite long. I don't know how you want it to be. If you want me to go over more, just let me know and I can. But for now, I will sign off. Just remember that correlation is not causation. And just because two things are related does not mean that one causes the other, right? If it's a sunny day and, let's say two things are correlated, right? You got a college degree and Donald Trump is president. But Donald Trump being president didn't cause you to get your college degree, right? They're just related. They happen to happen at the same time, but it doesn't mean that one is causing the other, right? And so you'll very often be confronted with these correlation causation issues. And you'll be confronted with them as an attorney too, right? Like someone will say, that you're defending a client, right? And your client is accused of burning down a house. And the prosecutor comes in and says, well, your client, they play with Gundam action figures. Okay, they love massive Gundam mobile suit, the TV show, whatever. I watched that when I was a kid. They have like a million different versions of it, of like the giant fighting robots, right? And he plays with these toys. And there's a study that shows that, people who play with action figures are more likely to burn down houses. People who like Gundam, Japanese anime, burn down houses more than people who don't. So that means that your client must be guilty. And you have to be like, wait, what does that have to do? Like, just because he plays with the action figures doesn't mean he's burning houses down. Like, maybe they're correlated, but maybe it has nothing to do with the action figures, right? Like, I bet, like, I just made this up, but like, I'm gonna bet that the kinds of people who play with Gundam action figures are probably mostly boys, and men probably start more fires than women do. So it's probably not the action figures that are causing them to start fires. It's just like men are usually crazier than women are and they burn things down, right? Like, what if it has nothing to do with the action figures, right? Um, just be really strict with that. And you would have to be, as an attorney, able to point that out, like, hey, this math is not mathing here, right? Just because there's a relationship doesn't mean that one is causing the other one. That's crazy. And then really focus on that first argument, which is A is B, therefore A is C. Or A is B because A is C. You can phrase it differently. It's the same thing. Keep that in mind that they're not the same thing, right? Like, if you're in court and you're an attorney and your client you're defending them, and they are accused of um, neglecting their child. They've been brought to court on child neglect. And the prosecutor says, jury, judge, this person's client is guilty of neglect. A is B. Client A is guilty B. Because the client A played a video game on their Nintendo Switch for 30 minutes without checking on their child. So we have A, the accused, is B, guilty of neglect, because A, the accused, C, played on their Nintendo Switch for 30 minutes, right? And your job as an attorney there is to say, like, hey, look, playing on a Nintendo Switch for 30 minutes is not the same thing as child neglect. Like, are you telling me that you've never done something without checking on your kid for 30 minutes? Like, don't you sleep? Like, if you sleep, you're technically not checking on your kid for 30 minutes, right? Um, you know, is it really neglect if a parent plays a video game for 30 minutes? Is that really child neglect? Right? So it would be your job to notice that A is B because A is C. Notice that doesn't really work, and then like object to it. Like, no, bullshit. My client is not neglectful just because they baked a cake for 30 minutes, or they played Nintendo for 30 minutes, or they were in the shower for 30 minutes. Like, oh no, like that's not child neglect, right? And it would be your job to argue that. So keep those structures in mind. It happens on the LSAT all the time, and then it will happen in legal practice in law school as well. All right, I hope this helped, and I will sign off for now. All right, have a good day. Bye.